The Lion Who Lost His Roar. Once upon a time, deep in the heart of the jungle, there was a proud lion named Leo. Leo was not only the king of the jungle, but also known for his powerful roar that could be heard for miles. All the animals respected him, and his roar kept the peace in the jungle. But Leo's pride in his roar grew so great that he began to look down on the smaller animals. One sunny morning, Leo woke up and opened his mouth to let out his mighty roar, but nothing came out. His voice was gone. Panic filled his heart. How would he maintain his power and control without his roar? Desperate to get his voice back, he ran to his friend, the wise old owl, who lived high up in a tree. "Owl, my roar is gone," Leo cried. "Without it, I'm not a king. Can you help me get it back?" The owl looked at Leo thoughtfully. "Perhaps this is a lesson for you, Leo. You have relied too much on your voice and forgotten what truly makes a king." "But I need my roar," insisted Leo, pacing back and forth. The owl nodded gently. "I will tell you what to do. Travel through the jungle and ask for help from 3 animals you think are beneath you. Show them kindness and humility, and maybe you will find your voice again." Leo, though proud, knew he had no choice. He started his journey through the jungle, feeling smaller than ever before. The first animal he met was a tiny mouse named Mimi, struggling to carry a large piece of fruit back to her home. Leo looked down at her and hesitated. Normally, he would have ignored such a small creature, but remembering the owl's words, he spoke gently. "Mimi, can I help you carry that fruit?" The mouse looked up in surprise, but smiled gratefully. "Yes, please, Leo." "Thank you." With a quick swipe of his paw, Leo picked up the fruit and carried it all the way to Mimi's small burrow. When they arrived, Mimi said, "You know, Leo, you may be big and strong, but helping others makes you even greater." Leo felt a small warmth in his chest, but his roar still did not return. He continued through the jungle and came across a peacock named Percy, who was tangled in some thorny bushes. Percy flapped his colorful wings helplessly, trying to free himself. "Help! Someone, please!" cried Percy. Leo, remembering the owl's advice, walked over and carefully used his strong claws to break the thorns and release Percy from the bush. "Thank you, Leo," Percy said, shaking out his feathers. "You saved me. I thought you didn't care about us smaller animals." Leo sighed. "I have been too proud, Percy. Maybe I should have shown more care and respect." Percy smiled and bowed. True strength isn't about power alone. It's also about kindness. Feeling lighter, Leo walked on, still unable to roar, but determined to complete the owl's task. He then stumbled upon a tiny frog named Freddie, who was stuck at the bottom of a steep hill. Freddie was too weak to climb up and had been calling for help. Leo, bending low, offered his back. "Climb up, Freddie. I'll carry you." The little frog hesitated, then hopped onto Leo's back. With careful steps, Leo climbed up the hill, making sure Freddie didn't fall. When they reached the top, Freddie croaked happily. "Thank you, Leo. I didn't think you would ever help someone so small." Leo smiled. "I used to think only my roar made me powerful, but I see now that true power comes from caring for others." At that moment, Leo felt a strange sensation in his throat. He opened his mouth, and a gentle yet mighty roar echoed through the jungle. His voice was back, but this time, it was not just loud. It was filled with warmth and sincerity. Leo realized that the owl was right. He had been so focused on using his voice to command others that he had forgotten the real qualities of a leader: humility, kindness, and compassion. Leo returned to the wise old owl. "I found my roar again, owl," he said softly. "But I also found something much more important." The owl's eyes gleamed. "And what is that, King Leo?" "I found that being a true leader isn't about making others fear you. It's about earning their respect through kindness." The owl smiled. "Now, you are truly the king of the jungle." From that day on, Leo's roar was not only a sign of power, but also a reminder to all the animals that strength comes from within, and true greatness lies in treating others with care and respect. And so, the jungle was more peaceful and united than ever before, all thanks to a lion who learned the value of kindness. The Fox and the Honest Rabbit. Once upon a time, in a dense, lush forest, there lived a clever fox named Felix. Felix was known throughout the forest for his sharp wit and cunning nature. He often tricked other animals to get what he wanted. One day, Felix decided to play a trick on a gentle rabbit named Remy, who lived in a cozy burrow by the river. Remy was an honest and hard-working rabbit who grew the sweetest carrots in the entire forest. He was known for his generosity, often sharing his crops with his neighbors. Felix, being a sly fox, thought he could take advantage of Remy's kindness. One bright morning, Felix approached Remy's burrow with a friendly smile. "Good morning, Remy," he called out cheerfully. Remy poked his head out of his burrow and smiled back. "Good morning, Felix. What brings you here today?" "Oh, nothing much," Felix replied with a grin. "I was just admiring your beautiful carrot garden. I was wondering if I could borrow some carrots for a feast I'm planning." Remy, being the kind rabbit he was, nodded eagerly. "Of course, Felix. Take as many as you need. I'm happy to help." Felix's eyes gleamed with mischief as he filled his bag with Remy's carrots, but instead of a few, he took almost all of them. Remy watched as Felix's bag grew heavier and heavier. "Aren't you taking a bit too much, Felix?" Remy asked cautiously. Felix just laughed. "Don't worry, Remy. I'm sure you'll grow more. You're so good at it." Feeling a bit uneasy, but not wanting to argue, Remy let Felix leave with his bag full of carrots. The next day, Remy's garden looked empty and bare. Remy sighed and decided to plant new seeds, hoping to have a good harvest again soon. Days turned into weeks, and Remy's new carrots began to sprout. He took care of them diligently, watering them every day and making sure they had plenty of sunlight. Just as his garden started to bloom with fresh carrots again, Felix returned. "Hello again, Remy," Felix called out in a sweet voice. "I see your garden has grown back. Could I borrow some more carrots? I promise to pay you back soon." Remy hesitated. Felix had never paid him back for the first batch of carrots, but he didn't want to seem unkind, so he sighed and agreed. "All right, Felix, but please don't take too many." Felix grinned widely and started pulling up Remy's new carrots. Once again, he filled his bag until it was almost overflowing. Remy could only watch as his hard work disappeared into Felix's hands. Days later, as Remy looked at his empty garden once more, he felt sad and frustrated. Why did Felix keep taking his carrots and never give anything back? Remy decided that this time, if Felix returned, he would stand up for himself. Sure enough, a week later, Felix appeared at the entrance of Remy's burrow, smiling innocently. "Good day, Remy. Do you have any carrots to share with me today?" But this time, Remy didn't smile. He looked at Felix seriously and said, "Felix, you've taken so many of my carrots, but you've never paid me back. I work hard to grow them, and it's not fair that you take them all without giving anything in return." Felix was taken aback. He wasn't expecting the usually kind rabbit to speak up. He scratched his head awkwardly. "Well, Remy, I thought you didn't mind. You never said anything before." Remy shook his head. "Just because I didn't say anything doesn't mean it's okay. Friendship should be about giving and sharing, not just taking. You've been using my kindness, Felix." Felix felt a pang of guilt in his chest. For the first time, he realized how selfish he had been. Remy had been nothing but kind to him, and he had taken advantage of it. Felix looked down at his paws, ashamed. "I'm sorry, Remy," Felix said softly. "You're right. I've been unfair. I promise I'll make it up to you." Remy nodded slowly. "If you truly mean it, then I'll forgive you. But remember, trust has to be earned back. Felix spent the next few days working hard to make amends. He brought seeds, water, and even fertilizer to help Remy's garden grow. He stayed by Remy's side, helping him plant new carrots and taking care of the garden. Slowly but surely, Remy's garden began to bloom once more. As they worked together, Felix learned how much effort it took to grow just a single carrot. He realized that Remy's kindness wasn't something to be taken lightly. From then on, Felix never took more than he needed and always made sure to give something back in return. The forest animals noticed the change in Felix. He was no longer the cunning fox who tricked others for his own gain. Instead, he became known as the fox who helped others and shared what he had. Remy and Felix became good friends, and Felix never forgot the lesson Remy had taught him. The Boy and the Magical Tree. Once upon a time, in a small village surrounded by a dense forest, there was a young boy named Oliver. Oliver was an energetic and curious child who loved exploring the woods. One day, while wandering deeper into the forest than usual, he stumbled upon a tree unlike any other. Its branches shimmered with a golden light, and its leaves seemed to whisper in the wind. The tree was enormous, with roots that spread far and wide, and it stood tall and proud, as if guarding a great secret. Intrigued, Oliver approached the tree. As he did, he noticed something even more peculiar: a small door at the base of the trunk. Curiosity getting the better of him, Oliver pushed the door gently, and to his surprise, it swung open. Inside, he found a tiny room with a single glowing acorn resting on a pedestal. A note was placed beside it, written in elegant script. To the one who finds this tree, plant this acorn and it will grant your deepest desire. But remember, great gifts come with great responsibilities. Oliver's heart pounded with excitement. His deepest desire? He thought for a moment. What did he want most in the world? Oliver's family was poor, and they struggled to have enough food every day. He thought of his mother, working tirelessly, and his little sister, who always went to bed hungry. Then he knew what his wish would be. He wanted endless food for his family, so they would never have to go hungry again. Carefully, Oliver took the acorn and buried it in a small patch of soil next to the tree. The moment the acorn touched the earth, the ground rumbled softly, and before his eyes, a magnificent tree began to grow. Its trunk thickened, its branches stretched high, and soon it was covered in an abundance of fruits: apples, pears, bananas, berries, and even vegetables like tomatoes and carrots. Oliver couldn't believe his eyes. His wish had come true. Excitedly, he picked as much as he could carry and ran back to his village. His mother and sister gasped when they saw the basket overflowing with fresh produce. "Where did you get all this?" his mother asked, eyes wide with disbelief. "There's a magical tree in the forest," Oliver explained. "I found a special acorn and made a wish. Now we'll never go hungry again." For days and weeks, Oliver and his family enjoyed the fruits and vegetables from the magical tree. They shared the abundance with their neighbors, who were also amazed and grateful. The tree seemed to produce more and more, and soon the entire village had more food than they could eat. But as time passed, something strange began to happen. The more Oliver took from the tree, the more it started to change. The once vibrant leaves began to turn dark, and the golden light that shimmered from its branches dimmed. The fruits became smaller and less sweet, and soon the tree looked weak and tired. Worried, Oliver returned to the tree one evening. As he stood before it, he noticed the tiny door at its base had reappeared. This time, when he opened it, there was another note. "The tree's magic is not infinite. To keep giving, it needs care and balance. What you take must be given back." Oliver's heart sank. He realized that he had been taking from the tree without giving anything in return. He thought about the great gift the tree had given him and how he had used it without considering its well-being. Determined to make things right, he gathered his family and told them what he had learned. "We've been taking too much from the tree," he said. "We need to give back." His mother and sister nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Together, they decided to tend to the tree, to water it, and to care for it like a living being rather than just a source of food. They planted new seeds around its base, trimmed the branches gently, and spoke to it softly, expressing their gratitude. As the days went by, the tree began to recover. Its leaves regained their vibrant color. The branches grew strong once more, and the fruits became sweeter and more plentiful. But Oliver had learned his lesson. From then on, he and his family only took what they needed and always made sure to nurture the tree in return. The news of the magical tree spread far and wide, and people came from distant villages to see it. But Oliver, now wiser, shared the story of how they had almost lost this incredible gift due to greed. He taught everyone who visited that true abundance comes not just from taking, but from giving back. One day, an elderly man from a neighboring village approached Oliver. "What you have done is remarkable, young boy. You have discovered a secret that many never understand: balance. The tree may have granted your wish, but it is your respect and care that kept the magic alive." Oliver smiled, looking up at the towering branches swaying gently in the wind. "I thought the tree's magic was in granting wishes, but I see now that its true magic is in teaching us to be responsible and grateful." And so the magical tree continued to thrive, not because it was enchanted, but because it was cherished and cared for. Oliver and his family and all the villagers learned that true prosperity comes not from endless wealth, but from nurturing what we have and ensuring that we live in harmony with the world around us. From that day forward, the village flourished. They never took more than they needed, and in turn, the tree and the land around them gave back even more generously. It was a place where people and nature existed together in a perfect magical balance. The Fox and the Wise Turtle. Once upon a time, in a lush green forest, there lived a clever but mischievous fox named Fenton. Fenton loved playing tricks on other animals to show off his cleverness. One day, he came across a slow-moving turtle named Timmy, who was slowly making his way down a forest path. Fenton smirked as he watched Timmy inch along at a snail's pace. "Hello there, Timmy," Fenton called out mockingly. "Where are you off to in such a hurry?" he teased, knowing full well that Timmy was anything but fast. Timmy, being a calm and patient turtle, looked up and smiled. "I'm just on my way to the pond to meet my family," he replied softly. Fenton's eyes gleamed with a mischievous idea. He decided it would be fun to make fun of Timmy and his slow nature. "Why don't we have a race to see who can reach the pond first?" Fenton suggested with a grin. "Surely I can beat you in a matter of seconds." Timmy thought for a moment. He knew that he was no match for Fenton's speed, but he also knew something that Fenton didn't. "All right, Fenton," Timmy agreed with a nod. "But there's one condition. Let's make this race a little more challenging. The winner isn't the one who just reaches the pond first. It's the one who brings back a flower from the other side of the pond, too." Fenton laughed loudly. "A flower? That's even easier. I'll be done before you even make it to the pond," he boasted. They both stood at the starting line, and on the count of 3, Fenton shot off like a streak of lightning. Timmy, as expected, moved slowly but steadily along the path. Within moments, Fenton was already far ahead, darting through the trees and across the grassy meadow. But as he neared the pond, Fenton noticed something odd. The flower Timmy had mentioned was growing on a small island in the middle of the pond, and the only way to reach it was to swim. Fenton stopped in his tracks, his grin fading. He hated getting wet. No matter. Fenton muttered to himself. I'll just wait until Timmy catches up, and then I'll figure out a way to get that flower without getting wet. So Fenton sat by the water's edge, waiting impatiently. After what seemed like forever, Timmy finally arrived, still moving at his slow pace. Without a word, Timmy slowly made his way to the water, waded in, and started swimming towards the little island. "What are you doing, Timmy?" Fenton called out, bewildered. "You'll tire yourself out before you even get the flower." But Timmy didn't reply. He kept swimming, slowly but surely, until he reached the island. Then, with a calm smile, he picked a beautiful red flower and began swimming back. Fenton could only watch in shock and disbelief as Timmy returned to the shore, the flower delicately held in his mouth. "How did you do that?" Fenton demanded angrily when Timmy stepped out of the water. "You're so slow on land, but you swam all the way to the island and back." Timmy set the flower down gently and looked at Fenton with wise, knowing eyes. "I may be slow on land, Fenton, but turtles are strong swimmers. You were so focused on my weakness that you didn't notice my strength." Fenton blinked, realization dawning on him. He had been so confident in his speed that he hadn't even thought about what Timmy might be good at. He had underestimated the turtle just because he was slow on land. Timmy continued, "Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. You may be fast, Fenton, but that doesn't mean you're the best at everything. Sometimes it's more important to be patient and use what you're good at instead of rushing through with what you think is your strength." Fenton looked down, feeling ashamed. He had always been so eager to show off his speed that he hadn't considered that others might have talents and skills he didn't understand. "I'm sorry, Timmy," Fenton said sincerely. "I shouldn't have tried to make fun of you. You taught me a valuable lesson today." Timmy smiled warmly. "It's all right, Fenton. We all have things to learn from each other. I may be slow, but that doesn't mean I can't accomplish great things." From that day forward, Fenton stopped making fun of the other animals and started looking at them differently. He realized that just because someone wasn't good at what he was good at didn't mean they weren't good at something else. He learned to respect others for their unique abilities, no matter how different they seemed. As for Timmy, he continued to move at his own pace, unbothered by what others thought. He knew that true strength came not from being the fastest or the strongest, but from understanding and using one's own strengths wisely. The Sparrow and the Mighty Oak. In a vast, lush forest, there stood a mighty oak tree named Orion. Orion was the oldest and tallest tree in the entire forest. His thick branches stretched high into the sky, and his deep roots anchored him firmly to the earth. The animals of the forest looked up to him for his strength and wisdom, and they often sought shelter under his wide canopy. Orion was proud of his status and believed he was unshakable. But little did he know, the coming season would test his true strength. One spring morning, a tiny sparrow named Pip fluttered around the forest, looking for a place to build her nest. Pip was new to the area and was mesmerized by the grandeur of the forest. When she saw Orion, she was awestruck by his size and beauty. "Wow, you must be the most magnificent tree I've ever seen," Pip chirped happily. "May I build my nest on one of your branches?" Orion looked down at the tiny sparrow perched on one of his lower branches. With a gentle but slightly condescending smile, he replied, "Of course, little bird. You may build your nest here as long as you understand that I am a mighty oak. I have stood tall for centuries and will continue to stand for centuries more. You may stay, but remember, I am unmovable and steadfast. Nothing can shake me." Pip nodded, not quite understanding his arrogance, and began to build her nest with twigs and leaves. From high up on Orion's branch, Pip felt safe and secure, convinced that nothing could harm her under the protection of such a strong tree. As the days turned into weeks, Pip's nest grew more comfortable, and she even laid a few eggs. One day, the sky darkened and the wind began to howl through the forest. A powerful storm was approaching. The other animals scurried to find shelter, while Pip huddled nervously in her nest. "Do not fear, little bird," Orion rumbled. "I have stood against storms far stronger than this. Just hold on, and you'll see how unshakable I am." But this time, the storm was different. The winds roared and whipped through the forest with an intensity unlike any before. Trees were uprooted, and branches snapped like twigs. Even mighty Orion began to sway and groan under the pressure. Pip clung desperately to her nest as the mighty oak trembled. "What's happening, Orion? I thought you were unmovable." Pip cried out in fear. I am strong, but even I have my limits," Orion replied, his voice strained. "The storm is stronger than anything I have faced before. I cannot hold on much longer." Just as it seemed Orion might fall, Pip noticed something. A group of small trees, bent but not broken, stood together, their roots intertwined to support one another against the wind. Though individually weak, together they were able to withstand the storm. "Orion, look! Those trees are supporting each other," Pip exclaimed. "Maybe if you leaned on others, you wouldn't have to face this storm alone." Orion looked at the small trees, and a thought struck him. He had always prided himself on his solitary strength, but maybe true strength wasn't about standing alone. With a great effort, Orion extended his roots and intertwined them with the smaller trees around him. Slowly, the trembling stopped. With the support of the smaller trees, Orion regained his stability and stood firm once more. The storm eventually passed, and the forest, though battered, stood united and strong. Pip, safe in her nest, looked around in amazement. She realized that even the greatest strength comes from knowing when to accept help. "Thank you, Orion," Pip chirped softly. "You are still the strongest tree I know, but now I understand that even the strongest need others sometimes." Orion, humbled by the storm and the lesson it brought, smiled gently. "You are right, Pip. I have learned that true strength lies not in standing alone, but in standing together. From now on, I will not be too proud to lean on others when I need to." Pip smiled, her heart filled with warmth. From that day forward, the animals of the forest looked not just to Orion's strength, but also to the unity of all the trees, big and small. And Orion, once proud of his solitary power, grew even stronger by sharing his strength with those around him.